Okay, welcome back to our stream of Bhakti, continuing our discussion in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the ancient Bhakti text. Bhakti yoga, very important part of yoga as a whole, the yoga of devotion, and a lot of the philosophy is found in these pages in the Bhagavatam. And I'm so happy that Vrinda is back with us again this week. Welcome back, Vrinda.
Very nice to be back. Nice to be with you all.
What's it like in Winnipeg right now? Did I mention that Vrinda's in Winnipeg? So what's it like over there?
We're having a heat wave. Yeah, last night was all thunderstorms. So now it's down to 30 instead of 36 or something.
Wow. Place of extremes, Winnipeg, right?
Totally extremes.
So I'm looking forward to our conversation today. We're getting right into, I think, the heart of this chapter. The chapter that we're in is the passing away of Bhishma, who was the great warrior and also a yogi. And now, as we meet him, he's on the battlefield. He's lying on his bed of arrows, which, as we described before, is a rather unpleasant bed. The arrows protruding through his body, and hundreds of them. And but because he's a yogi, he chose not to leave his body, as we say. Like a yogi, very powerful yogi, can choose to keep their life force within their body as long as they want, really. As we'll find in the Bhagavatam, we're going to read about so many different yogis, great yogis of the past. And one thing is, they could kind of choose to depart from this world at their will. He was staying in his body on the battlefield because he wanted to leave at the right time. And we touched on this last week a little bit, how the Bhagavad Gita also describes this, how yogis, they would choose to leave according to where the sun was in its orbit. Somehow or other that would I don't know, help their own spiritual journey. It's quite mystical. I don't know much to say about it, although it's intriguing. You don't know anything about it, Vrinda?
No, I don't know why. I've always just accepted, okay, that's a good time to go, and this is not a good time to go, more or less like traffic lights.
Right. And somehow it has like traffic lights for the yogi.
Yeah.
And somehow it can have an impact on what's available to the yogi at that point in time, where their destination can or cannot be. As we'll read later, it didn't really matter for Bhishma, but he was doing it because, well, actually, it doesn't come up in the Bhagavatam, but in the Mahabharata, it describes that when he was hit with all those arrows and he fell off the chariot, and he was there, like everyone was aghast. No one could understand even that he had been defeated, because there was nobody more powerful than him. So the fact that he was actually defeated was just a shock. And there were higher beings who were observing the whole battle, demigods, whatever they might be, and they were distressed because he was a great yogi, and it looked like he was going to be leaving his body at an inappropriate time. So a voice came from the sky saying, like, basically, I'm paraphrasing, like, how can this be that the sun is where it is now and this great yogi has fallen? And then Bhishma, like lying on the ground like that, speaks up and he says, no, don't worry, I'm here and I'm going to stay until the time is right. So it was like, I don't know. He was. What's the significance of that? It's just that he was so highly regarded and he was so powerful, and he had like respect for the sentiments and feelings of the higher beings that were observing the situation. That he was going through this again for the benefit of others. Had you heard that before? That part of the pastime?
Yeah. That's part I had heard. Yeah. I have to say, I have not seen the Mahabharata movies that are so wonderful, that had, everybody enthralled for, over a year in the serialized version. I've always meant to watch it. So instead of having the wonderful experience in any way of like sequentially all the way through, I've just heard it in bits and pieces, more or less like we're doing now, yeah. So I'm not an expert in the whole Mahabharata story, but yeah, I had heard that about, voice from the sky, and him being able to say, don't worry, it's all right. I'm in control of this situation.
Yeah, he was just so powerful. But I find it interesting because it sets the backdrop for the culture and the time and the place where we're at right now. Like, the Bhagavatam takes place thousands of years ago. And at that time, there seems to have been, at least it's described in the Bhagavatam, much more relationship and communication and whatnot with other realms, and with humanity. Humanity had contact and was aware of and reciprocate. There were relationships between realms even, and that's part of the culture. It was everybody understood that was the reality at that time, and that's all throughout the Bhagavatam that we're going to read about. So there he is. He's on the battlefield. And of course, the battle's over, and he's being protected by some soldiers so that he isn't consumed by animals on the battlefield as he's waiting for the right moment to depart. And Yudhisthira and a whole company of people, including Krishna and Arjuna, come out to see him. He instructs, Bhishma instructs Yudhisthira on how to become a king, how to be the king. And then the sun moves into a particular place where exactly what he was waiting for. He sees that now it's the time. And so he starts now to focus his mind on Krishna, who is standing right there. And so that's where we're at. And last week we're picking up at text 33.
It seems that Krishna had also obviously been there with all the arrows, but he had, like Yudhisthira, come and gone, and now he has come back. And so also maybe, understanding, the time is, the right time is coming. Yeah, and preparing to be there for the momentous occasion.
Yeah, this is a big event. Everybody has been, and especially all the people all of the beings who were also waiting for the right moment are also observing. So it's like there's a lot of very elevated like personalities, souls that are present at this moment. I was thinking, there's like, I was hoping we'd get through like 5 or 6 of these verses today. And maybe what I could do is I could read, like I'll read some translations and some sections of the commentary. And just to kind of like set the mood, set the scene, so we can kind of get absorbed in exactly what's taking place right now. And you can jump in at any moment, like if you want to pause on something here. Does that sound okay?
It does. I'm not very likely to jump in.
Or do you have do you have a Bhagavatam with you open right there?
What I have is Veda based on my phone. That's
okay.
What I've got right now.
Do you want to read the translations and then I can read the commentary?
Oh, that's possible. Okay. So which one did you want to start on again? 32?
33.
33. Okay. All right. So this is Bhishma Dev actually talking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 33. This is the one where he says Sri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. That one?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he says that Sri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He has appeared on this earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the tamal tree. His body attracts everyone in the 3 planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face, covered with paintings of sandalwood pulp, be the object of my attention, and may I not desire fruitive results.
So here we're in like this is especially the realm of bhakti where we're focusing on the transcendence in like connecting with the supreme in the form of a personality, and of course that personality is present with Bhishma in his moments of leaving. And so, well, like there's a lot to unpack and all that, right? But I think what we'll do here is just kind of focus on the beauty aspect. It's a different, perhaps, concept of a supreme personality that that may be found anywhere, that may be presented anywhere else. Krishna is the most beautiful, the most attractive being. And so here, Bhishma is kind of describing some of his beauty. In the commentary, Prabhupada says, Prabhupada says, nowhere in the universe are there such beautiful bodily features as those of Krishna. Therefore, his transcendental body has nothing to do with anything materially created. So one of the things that we're going to try to do here is we're going to try to replace whatever, if there's a need for this, to replace whatever concepts of a personal form of the divine, like whatever could have been there in the past. Like both you and I come from a Christian background. Mm-hmm. And so I've got like a lot of basic kind of like images or concepts or impressions that I take from that experience that are conjured when I think about like a personal divinity. And so for me, what this does is it replaces a lot of it with extreme pure beauty. Not that there isn't that concept in other traditions as well, but this is kind of like an exclusive way that the divine is described, that Krishna is described, completely beautiful. You have anything to say about that?
Well, it is interesting. Like the Christian model, because of the things it says in the Old Testament about God being the Ancient of Days, and the idea of being the wisest and the strongest and all those things, made some people go to an old man. It's very interesting. I'm not sure that the scripture itself supports that idea, and it might have come from the Greeks and Romans idea of Zeus. But like if a supreme being is able to sustain his light, his appearance at any one particular age, it's interesting to note that some past cultures chose to freeze frame that as gray hair and a gray beard and really, really old, which might have something to say something about their respect for elders more than our respect for elders. But it's interesting, like if the supreme being is able to freeze frame at an age, why choose an old age? Why did we assume that being immortal and perpetually there would mean being still getting older and older? So I'm not entirely sure that the scripture supports the appearance, an elderly appearance, but certainly the artistic expressions of the Middle Ages and whatnot definitely portrayed an ancient looking person. But I'm not sure that that's in the scripture. I no recollection at all of it ever saying he looks old.
Yeah, but definitely in the artistic expression, like you're saying. Yeah, good point. Here's another little comment. This is all about the beauty, right? And of course, the reason why it's focusing on the beauty right now is because Bhishma is focusing his mind in his last breaths, and Krishna is right there, and he's getting absorbed in how beautiful Krishna is appearances, right? So in the commentary, while Krishna was the charioteer of Arjuna, sun rays glittered on the dress of Krishna, and the beautiful hue created by the reflection of such rays was never forgotten by Bhishma Dev. He's remembering the battlefield. That's what's going on in his mind right now. He's getting absorbed in like this moment when well, it's leading up to the moment, which was the highlight of Bhishma's life, was when Krishna actually attacked him on the battlefield, right? So that's where we're going here. This is where Bhishma is taking us in his meditation. Want to go to the next one, text 34?
Sure. Now, because it's on my phone, I got to check that I've landed in the right spot. On the battlefield, is that the right spot?
Yep.
Good. On the battlefield, and then he explains, where Sri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hoofs of the horses. And because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Sri Krishna.
Okay, so this is pretty far out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read some of the commentary here so we can we can extract something here. So Prabhupada says Krishna is the absolute form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. That's Satchit Ananda, right? Eternity, bliss, and knowledge. As such, transcendental loving service to Krishna in one of the 5 principal relations, Shanta Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya, etc., and neutrality, these relationships are possible. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So it appears that Bhishma Dev is repenting the actions he committed against Krishna. This is the commentary. Because as he is meditating in his mind about this moment, he's also kind of thinking, oh, well, he's remembering that he actually attacked Krishna, right? So he says, but factually, Krishna's body was not at all pained due to his transcendental existence. Krishna's body is not matter. This is the mystery, right? This is the so both Krishna and Krishna's body are completely spiritual. Spirit is never pierced, burnt, dried, moistened, etc. So spirit is never really impacted by anything material. Can't be pierced, can't be burnt, can't be dried. There's a verse like that in the Gita, right? I can't remember the verse. It's in the 2nd chapter. Can't be moistened.
Right.
All these words.
Can't be withered. Yep.
Yeah. So this is an important point, because it's also true for us. It's true for Krishna. It's also true for us. The difference is that our spirit is encased in it's in a material casing that can be cut, burnt, dried, moistened, all these things, right? And so when that happens to our casing, and we think that casing is us, we think it's happening to us. But the soul it doesn't perish. So the thing with Krishna, which is such a mystery, is that he appears, but he doesn't need to have a material covering. He appears in his own form. So when Bhishma is attacking him with arrows, he's not actually feeling any hurt, but he is, well, I'll keep reading. Therefore, Bhishma Dev's piercing of Krishna's body is a sort of bewildering problem. But those who are devotees or who are bhakti yogis are not bewildered. Prabhupada doesn't explain this point in this, but we're going to have to go a little further to get more, to dig into this more. I'm trying to, because this commentary goes on for like a page and a half. So I'm trying to pick out the most salient things so that we, for this point, Krishna, although he has this body that can't actually be cut, it appears that he's getting cut. Why? So can we go on to text 35? Oh no, Vrinda, you're frozen. Okay, I'll keep reading. And then if you need to, yeah, you'll log on and come back. Oh, are you there now?
It disconnected itself this time.
Okay.
I heard you say Prabhupada doesn't explain that. And then all of a sudden, everybody was very still.
So we're gonna get to this thing that's going on. While like Krishna, he seems to be like being bruised and damaged by Bhishma's arrows. So we're gonna pick up with text 35.
Can I say one thing about intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, says Bhishma Dev, were enjoyed by him. You know, that's interesting. He doesn't say put up with. He didn't put up with it because it's part of the story. He didn't object. It's like he enjoyed it. This is an interesting interaction that they're having.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in order to understand the interaction, it's going to, like, in a roundabout way, these verses that we're going to read here, they help us understand the mood that's taking place and the significance of it. But it's going to kind of be a little bit of roundabout because it's describing something that's quite subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you want the next verse?
35, yeah.
In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Sri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana. And while there, he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna.
So in the commentary, Prabhupada says, Arjuna ordered Krishna to place his chariot between the phalanxes of the soldiers, between the two armies, right? This is the Bhagavad Gita. This is the opening of the Bhagavad Gita. He asked him to stay there. Arjuna asked Krishna to stay there until he had finished observing the enemies he had to face in the battle. So when Krishna was so asked, he at once did so. Now, although this isn't about Bhishma, now we're talking about Arjuna, this is important to understand what's going on between Bhishma and Krishna. So
it's interesting. For a couple of these verses, Bhishma has complimented Krishna on being the friend of Arjuna. That's one of the main things he's saying about him is, you're Arjuna's friend.
So the subtle thing that we're uncovering here is the capacity of Krishna to have relationship and how deep that goes. And so we're going to get a glimpse here, like Bhishma is reflecting on Krishna's relationship with Arjuna. And understanding that will help us understand Krishna's relationship with Bhishma. So Prabhupada is commenting on this moment in Bhishma's mind. Bhishma is remembering these things about Krishna at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. He says, when Krishna was so asked, he at once did so, just like an order carrier. Like Arjuna ordered Krishna and Krishna did it. And Krishna pointed out all the important people on the opposite side, saying, here is Bhishma, here is Drona, and so on. Krishna, being the supreme being, is never the order supplier or order carrier of anyone, whoever he may be. But out of Krishna's causeless mercy and affection for the Bhakti yogis or devotees, sometimes Krishna carries out the order of the Bhakti yogi like an awaiting servant. by executing the order of a devotee. So when I say devotee, I'm talking about those who are like Bhakti yogis. So when Krishna receives an order from such a yogi, Krishna becomes pleased, just as a parent is pleased to carry out the order of a small child. Right?
Yep.
This is possible only out of pure transcendental love between Krishna and the yogi. And Bhishma Dev was quite aware of this fact. He therefore addressed Krishna as the friend of Arjuna. So he's reflecting on this love where Arjuna, so Krishna takes up this role as a chariot driver, which is considered to be not a glorious position in those days, right? It was to be like certainly a lesser, like a place of servitude for Arjuna. But he did it because that's exactly what Krishna enjoyed, was reciprocating in love by receiving an order, not being the superior, not being the overlord or whatever. So there's a mood there, right? That's very personal, where Krishna actually doesn't enjoy that mood of just being all powerful. That's not Krishna's mood. Is that he enjoys actually an intimate relationship where the yogi will feel so comfortable in that love that he can even order. Arjuna even orders Krishna to do something. Krishna's like, okay, and he does it. So it's a particular mood, right? Any comment on that?
Well, you mentioned how parents will be happy to obey their baby, their little one. I was thinking about, sometimes you're holding a kid that's too little to even walk, and the kid points, and so you go over where they point, and then they point somewhere else, and you go over where they point, and you're just totally happy to have an interaction with them like that, even though their communication is rudimentary, right? And in some ways our communication with the Supreme is pretty rudimentary. But in order to keep building that communication, we're happy to do that with the babies, and the Supreme is happy to do that with us.
Yeah. See, that's Krishna. That's the mood, right? It's very personal and very, very sweet. Okay, let's keep going. We'll go to text 36.
Okay, let me figure out how to get there fast.
We're gonna bring this back to Bhishma.
Okay, and again, he's talking about Arjuna. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction.
So here again, he's remembering Krishna speaking the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. That's the meditation here. And there is this reference to, there's two things that get paired quite often as we read the Bhagavatam, and there's like reverence taking place. One is the lotus flower, and the other is somebody's feet. So, lotus being beautiful. Lotus represents like kind of like it's an emblem of beauty.
And it's so translucent, right? It almost glows, and it doesn't get dirty. No matter, even if it's in dirty water, it still doesn't get dirty. And scientists are trying to study how and figure out the repelling factors so they can recreate it in synthetic materials.
Right. So we can maybe have clothing and never have to wash it, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's repelled right off of it.
That would be advancement.
That would.
So, and the other thing is the feet part being, it's a statement of humility, like to put one's, for example, head to another person's. I'll tell you a story. This is like a bit of a tangent, but I guess I'll tell the story that like this is part of the culture, right? Like when we, and so when we come before somebody whom we respect, then we may bow down and put our forehead right down onto the ground before them. And it's kind of like putting your head to their feet, right? And that's often seen when you go into like a temple or something. People will often prostrate themselves, like, or put their forehead to the floor as a sign of respect, fold their hands, this kind of thing. But this is something that was done culturally. People would do to other human beings, that were very revered, very respected, like a guru or teacher. And it is something that is also currently done in the Bhakti community in more formal settings, like say ashram life or temple life, where the residents actually learn this way to reciprocate with each other, offering respects. So one of the, so in the culture, of course, parents are greatly respected. And in the culture, children would, from an early age, learn to respect their parents by putting their head to the ground and like offer respects, right? Probably this is still done today to some degree.
In some places,
yeah. But I thought, so when I got involved in the Bhakti tradition, which was something quite different, I was so enthusiastic about it, and I kind of started sharing it with my parents, everything that I was learning, who are, and my parents, of course, are very religious Catholic people. And so they became quite concerned. I mean, for one thing, there's many parts of the philosophy that are quite that are quite a mystery to someone who would be coming from the Catholic tradition, right? And may seem like, I don't know, something unwanted. Like even concepts like karma, reincarnation, and all these things, they don't really jive so much with. So, I was writing them letters about, this is before email. So I would be writing them letters and stuff and sending them tapes of like kirtan and whatever. And they got so concerned that they got on a plane. So they live in the East Coast, New Brunswick, and they got so concerned that they bought plane tickets and flew out to British Columbia to meet with me. And there I was in ashram life, and completely absorbed in it and oblivious to how they might be feeling about the whole thing. And so when they came, one of the things I did is I just put my head on the ground right in front of them, and I offered my respects to them as their son, And you'd think that they would be, anyway. My mother was so shocked, she started crying. It was like it was quite a different time. I was quite a period of transition. I mean, I'm happy to say that over the years, I certainly matured in my presentation of what I was doing to them, and now they really can value and appreciate like the tradition I'm a part of. But at the time, I made it quite difficult for them in many ways. That's an example of it. So, but for me, at that time, being so involved in the culture and in the Bhagavatam and the studies, for me, I just absorbed it as a culture, just to kind of like show respect in that way by putting yourself at somebody's feet, and certainly my parents. And so we're going to see that recur throughout the Bhagavatam, and it's often this phrase, the lotus feet, but it's referring to this kind of like deep reverence and respect.
And trust, because, you're trusting wherever that person has been. They've either been only in clean places or they've washed afterwards.
Well, and also trust in the sense that, you're very vulnerable when you do that to somebody. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So anyways, little tangent there. The next text Yeah, can we read the next one?
We can.
We're in text, what, 36 now? Or we just read that? So we're going to text 37.
Fulfilling my desire.
Yeah, that's it.
And sacrificing his own promise.
Yep.
He got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran toward me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way.
Okay. So this is referring to the moment that Bhishma is remembering. And in the commentary, Prabhupada explains this moment, and I'll just kind of summarize it quickly. That Duryodhana, who was the evil, king on the other on the opposite side, Bhishma, by force of circumstance, was the general of that army, even though he was a friend of Arjuna and certainly a devotee of Krishna. But he loved Arjuna so much, Bhishma Dev, and he loved his brothers, Yudhisthira, who was, and the other brothers. Duryodhana, realizing that Bhishma Dev was the most powerful warrior, after some days of battle, became furious with Bhishma Dev and insisted that, he could not understand how Bhishma Dev, the most powerful warrior that existed, how the Pandavas could still be standing if Bhishma Dev was fighting to his full strength. And he accused Bhishma Dev of not fighting to his full strength out of affection for the opposite side. And it was true that Bhishma Dev did have strong affection for the opposite side and had no interest in wanting to kill them. But because he was a warrior, and because there was an etiquette, and a spirit, a warrior spirit, Bhishma could not tolerate being insulted in that way. So he made a vow to Duryodhana. He said that he took out 5 arrows, and he chanted powerful mantras, and he invoked celestial weapons into each of the arrows. And each one of them was destined for each of the Pandavas, one for Arjuna, one for Yudhisthira, one for Bhima, and the 2 twins. And so the next day he said that each one of these arrows will slay each one of these brothers. And if it doesn't happen, the only thing that can stop this from happening is that if Krishna breaks his vow, and Krishna's vow was not to fight. Krishna's vow was just to drive Arjuna's chariot, not to fight. So what ended up happening is that see if I should read this part. So he took a vow that the next day Krishna would have to take up weapons himself, otherwise his friend Arjuna would die. In the next day's fighting, Bhishma Dev fought so violently that both Arjuna and Krishna were in trouble. Arjuna was almost defeated. The situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhishma Dev the very next moment. At that time, Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhishma by keeping Bhishma's promise, which was more important than his own. Seemingly, he broke his own promise. He promised before the beginning of the battle that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjuna, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, just some broken wheel from a chariot.
Or did he just rip off his own chariot wheel?
I don't know that detail.
I sort of always thought he ripped off his own chariot wheel. Maybe somebody who has studied Mahabharata more would know. But
one way or the other, it was a big chariot wheel.
Yeah,
and which is quite symbolic,
chakra
of yes. So he does this to protect Arjuna. He gets down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhishma Dev in an angry mood, as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He dropped his covering cloth on the way, and out of great anger, he did not know that he had dropped it. Bhishma Dev at once gave up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna. So I showed this picture a few weeks back, where he's just like this. When he sees Krishna coming at him, he just drops his weapons, puts his arms out, and just waits to get hit by this wheel. But then the sun set, And the fighting of the day was ended at that very moment. And Arjuna was saved. Of course, there was no possibility of Arjuna's death because Krishna was on the chariot. But because Bhishma Dev wanted to see Krishna take up some weapon to save his friend, Krishna created the situation, making Arjuna's death imminent. He stood before Bhishma Dev to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he had taken up the wheel. So he wanted Bhishma's promise to be seen as more powerful than his own. See, there's another part of the mood that's coming out in Krishna, right? But it's also like in a mood, the reciprocation here is taking up, like Bhishma is a powerful warrior. There's like, so Krishna is reciprocating as a powerful warrior.
Yeah.
He's matching the mood,
right,
and reciprocating with it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, that's so amazing. It's like it's like Krishna took the relationships as more important than anything, more important than the various vows. Although you could maybe say that to pick up to pick up a piece of the vehicle is not the same as picking up a weapon, but he was sure going to use it for a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So it is still a weapon.
Yeah.
And although you could quibble on that point, but these two extremely powerful titans, like it's almost like a Marvel comic or a Marvel movie, where I don't even know what it was called, The End Game or something, had so many people watching it and so many people excited about every muscle that moved on each of these heroes,
Mm.
and in a way, this, to speak of it in terms of like Marvel comics or movies or something like that, is not too inappropriate, because in a way, it's a play. Like it's happening outside of the reality of the spiritual world, in the sense that neither of them can actually die. The real them, neither of them can actually die, but they can play at this really powerfully.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And like the material world is the only place that Krishna can have that kind of fun.
I guess the difference, yeah, right. I guess the difference between, like, you could say Bhishma and Krishna, but that situation and our situation, I mean, one of the differences would be that we don't realize that we're not going to die.
Right. Yes.
We're not really totally fully aware of that.
Right.
So we're very much caught up in the externals of the play.
Yeah.
And but if we don't do that, then the richness of our experience in this life is greatly enhanced. And that is being exemplified here in the way that this relationship is playing out, because Bhishma Dev is understanding his eternal nature, mm-hmm. and his eternal relationship with Krishna. His the relationship is just going so deep here.
Yeah,
like the exchange is just has such depth to it.
Yeah,
because their existence has such depth.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. Ani has made an interesting comment here. We are giving ourselves completely to the role.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And yet, but just like it being a role, like they're fighting in the play, they're fighting on the stage, they're fighting in the movie. But when the cameras stop rolling, they're buddies, right? Mm-hmm. But they are demonstrating all this strength and power through fighting. Mm-hmm. Like puppies. Puppies don't necessarily, think of little wolf pups or something. They don't dislike their litter mates, but that's how they learn to do what they have to do in the world, is by play fighting, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not fighting doesn't have to be hating. Fighting can be for fun. Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, yes, the outcome of who's going to control the kingdom and all that was resting on this particular battle, but still those who studied all their lives to be powerful warriors, this is fun for them. This is this is what they do. This is what they want to do.
Yeah, Prabhupada does mention in one of the commentaries here that how, because they were trained warriors, this was kind of their sport, so to speak.
Yeah.
So there was a mood in the whole thing of chivalry and expertise, and like all of the skills that they actually loved to put on display. And the thing that really strikes me, though, here in the case with Bhishma and Krishna, is how all of these details of the warrior, how they're used as expressions of love, because Krishna understands Bhishma's mood as a warrior. He reciprocates with him exactly in that particular mood that Bhishma finds so enthralling. Because he's a warrior, Krishna reciprocates with him as a warrior. And the same thing plays out in Bhakti for us, that we find that as we become more and more aware of Krishna's presence, and then we become more and more aware of how Krishna is revealing things to us. One of the most heart-melting things about the whole thing is about how it's so personalized, how things take place in a way that practically nobody could understand except for me. They're like private little messages that Krishna is giving me that I couldn't even explain. They're just like, they're so intimate in my heart that Krishna understands that are there, and he touches them with little things, little movements or little understandings or realizations.
Little winks.
Yeah. And so this is one of the things that kind of differentiates the bhakti path from other yoga paths, because the bhakti yogi is very much attuned and waiting for that I don't want to use this word reciprocation, because I know that's a what's another word for that?
A mouthful.
Yeah, what's another word for reciprocation? We were talking about this, right?
Yeah,
we're trying to figure out this word.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I
Someone's
guess the way it gets used is relational exchange, says Krishna Prana.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Let's go with that.
So the bhakti yogi is part of the meditation, part of the whole process of this yoga, is to seek out that relational exchange. It's not just based on my own yogic ability. It's also, where is that, I want to say reciprocation, where's that exchange?
Yeah.
Where's the exchange?
Where's
the bhakti
response? Yeah,
the bhakti yogi is always just kind of like looking for it. Where is it?
Yeah.
And of course, the more we're looking for it, then it gives more opportunity for that relationship to develop, right?
Right. So it's not about adopting a set of beliefs or a personal lifestyle or something. It's also a response back and forth. And you've mentioned several times today about how Krishna is doing this, appearing as a powerful warrior in front of Bhishma Dev, because Bhishma Dev can appreciate it. But Bhishma Dev is also giving Krishna. He said he appreciated these little wounds and things like that.
That's right.
Yeah. Krishna doesn't get. Krishna likes that too, and he. One of the things that he comes bombing around our planet for is things like that, because they're not happening in the spiritual world, because nobody's going to do that in the spiritual world. And I don't know, it always reminds me also of that story arc that's coming up in the Srimad Bhagavatam in a few, third canto? Where does it start? About Jai and Vijay.
That does start in the third canto. Yeah.
And they had an opportunity, they had consequences to some behavior. They had to have some time in the material world, and they had a choice of 10 lifetimes as bhakti yogis or 3 lifetimes as enemies of Krishna. And this choice was given to them by Krishna. And so then they made their choice to go for the fastest return, get home faster, thus go for the 3 lifetimes. So they got to give Krishna some really powerful fights, which he otherwise wouldn't have had, right? He gave them that choice. He says, what will it be? Will it be?
Yeah.
And
And we're gonna read all about that too coming up. Yeah.
So those are good rumbles that Krishna was happy about.
Well, we could read this if we can read text 38, I think it kind of sums up this.
Oh my goodness.
Do we have time?
Oh, I totally have time. I didn't realize how fast this time was going by.
Yeah, it goes by quite quickly. Okay. The next translation and the purport, I think it kind of helps us summarize and close this part.
Okay.
Go ahead.
May he, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield, he charged me, as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered, and his body was smeared with blood due to the wounds.
Commentary. The dealings of Krishna and Bhishma Dev on the battlefield of Kurukshetra are interesting because the activities of Krishna appeared to be partial to Arjuna and at enmity with Bhishma Dev. They were fighting, right? But factually, all of this was especially meant to show special favor to Bhishma Dev, who was a great devotee. The astounding feature, Prabhupada puts this sentence in italics, the astounding feature of such dealings is that a devotee can please Krishna by playing the part of an enemy, even by being an enemy. Of course, Bhishma was not really an enemy at heart. He was, which is all coming out quite clearly here. But in other words, there's no limitations on the spectrum of possible relationships with the divine. There's actually no limitation there. Full spectrum.
Back and forth relationship, as Maria has said.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's a good way to put it too. So Krishna, being absolute, can accept service even from one in the garb of an enemy. What did I want? One sec here. So Bhishma Dev played the part of a valiant warrior, and he purposefully pierced the body of Krishna so that to the common eyes, it appeared that Krishna was wounded. But factually, all this was a bewilderment. The all spiritual body cannot be wounded, and a devotee cannot become an enemy of Krishna. Had it been so, Bhishma Dev would not have desired to have had Krishna as the ultimate destination of his life. There was no need to come before Bhishma Dev with blood and wounds, but Krishna did so because the warrior devotee wanted to see the transcendental beauty of the Lord decorated with wounds created by his devotee. So this is the way of exchanging transcendental rasa, or relationships between Krishna and the devotee. By such dealings, both Krishna and the devotee become glorified. Krishna was so angry that Arjuna checked. Okay, this is really interesting. Krishna was so angry that Arjuna checked him when he was moving towards Bhishma Dev, because when Krishna jumped off the chariot, grabbed that wheel, and started rushing towards Bhishma Dev, Arjuna was like, he was shocked and aghast and ashamed. He was, because Arjuna was becoming overwhelmed because he didn't have it in his heart to fight with Bhishma Dev anymore. So because of his own hesitation, now Krishna was having to do all this. And so Arjuna immediately jumped off the chariot and started running after Krishna and dove at him and tried to, grabbed at him, actually caught a hold of Krishna. Yeah. And as Krishna was running, he kept on running as if Arjuna wasn't even there. He was just like dragging Arjuna as if Arjuna wasn't even hanging on to him. He had such force in his run, right? This is one of the peak moments, in the whole battle of Kurukshetra. Where did I lose? So Krishna was so angry that Arjuna checked him when he was moving towards Bhishma, But in spite of Arjuna's checking, he proceeded towards Bhishma Dev as a lover goes to a lover without caring for hindrances. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, how can you, it seems like a very strange analogy to place on a battlefield, right? But it just shows you how external that battlefield actually was and how this was all something that was going on. The real thing that was going on was between Krishna and Bhishma Dev's heart. It was actually it was all based on a very intense experience of love. He proceeded towards Bhishma Dev as a lover goes to a lover without caring for hindrances. Apparently, his determination was to kill Bhishma Dev, but factually, it was to please him. As a great devotee, Krishna is undoubtedly the deliverer of all souls. The impersonal, this is an add-on by Prabhupada here, that the impersonalist desires salvation, or in other words, liberation or mukti, and Krishna always awards this according to their aspiration. So after describing this intense scene of love, Prabhupada brings it back and says that that undoubtedly there are also other ways that people can connect with Krishna. And one of them, for example, is to just to understand Krishna in a more universal sense, without understanding this whole these personal dealings that are being described here, right? Even if one isn't attracted to this or doesn't understand it. In fact, the name that's used here in the Sanskrit is Mukunda, who awards liberation, right? So Krishna undoubtedly awards this for those who desire it.
Yeah.
And he always awards according to aspiration. But here, Bhishma aspires to see Krishna in his personal feature. All bhakti yogis aspire for this. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
So Bhishma wanted to see Krishna in a very personal way. So Krishna over the top was personal here, over the top. I think it would be a good moment to read this last verse. It's kind of like heartbreaking.
All right.
But one sec. We'll skip ahead a little bit, because now in the next few verses, Bhishma Dev, he utters more about meditations, and his mood starts to change a little bit, but it's focusing specifically on the fact on the intimacy of the relationships that's possible for Krishna. And because we're running out of time, it seems like a good moment to be with Bhishma as he leaves the world. Well, I think we've kind of caught the essence of his meditation, right? So that would be text number 40.
Oh, text number 40. Did you want to miss the 39?
Yeah, because we just don't have time now to go through all the rest of the verses. But I think we caught the essence of the mood of love that's being exchanged here. So now we'll go to Bhishma, and we'll say farewell to Bhishma. Yeah.
Okay, so it says, "Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Sri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Vrajadam, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the rasa dance." Am I in the right one?
You know what happened? I picked the right verse, and then my page flipped. So we just got a little bit more. Okay. So apparently we're meant to hear a little bit more about Bhishma. That here he is revealing that something that we're going to hear about more soon, which is a verse which he's shifting his meditation towards a mood of love that's even more intimate than the one that he's relishing with Krishna. Even though he's
wanted 39.
No, I wanted to go to text. No, I was actually text 42.
Oh, okay.
We'll put a bookmark here, because Bhishma Dev's opening up something for us that we're going to explore later, which is this mood of love that's off the battlefield and is in Vrajadam, Vrindavan, which is where we find Krishna in the rural setting, as the young cowherd boy, and the kind of loving exchange that he experiences there, which is even more intense than what Bhishma is meditating now in the battlefield. So, but Bhishma Dev is now turning his mind towards that. So we won't go into that mood of love at this point, because it's going to come up again in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
Text 42.
All right. Now I can meditate with full concentration upon that one Lord, Sri Krishna, now present before me, because now I have transcended the misconceptions of duality in regard to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the hearts of the mental speculators. He is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one.
Beautiful, eh? Krishna is in everyone's heart. This is like one of Bhishma's kind of his parting thought here, is that this Krishna that he loves so much is present in every single person's heart, and he's finding kind of great joy in that in the last moments. And so then the next verse, then we zoom out and we go to Sutta Goswami, because if we can remember, those of us who have been following from the beginning of the Bhagavatam is happening in layers. Everything we've just been hearing has been recited by Sutta Goswami to the sages in Naimisharanya, these sages that are sitting there listening to this one sage. That's way back, months and months ago, that we started getting into this part of his narration. But now we're zooming out, and he's narrating to those sages how Bhishma leaves his body. So you can go ahead and read text 43.
Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Supersoul, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. And thus he became silent, and his breathing stopped.
And so, as is described here as we go on, it's giving an external perspective of what Bhishma Dev did. Like, to those that observed him as a yogi, it appeared that he left his body and merged with the Brahman, because that's kind of like the progression that was perceived by the yogis. This is described in the commentaries and some of the following verses. But it's also described, Bhishma Dev's ultimate destination was that he went beyond the Brahmajyoti, and he actually entered into the spiritual realm, where he entered into his eternal relationship with Krishna. Pretty sweet, eh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there we go. We did it. That was Bhishma Dev. Every time we do this and we kind of get to know one of the personalities, it's always kind of hard to let them go and move on, whoever they may be. Some of them reoccur and some of them don't. Bhishma Dev won't be reoccurring for us in the Bhagavatam, but for those who would like to get to know him more, you have to read the Mahabharata. You can learn about his whole life and who he was. Such a beautiful person. As we learned from Kala last week, she even named her son after him. Another one of his names is Gangeya, right? One who was born of the Ganges, the Ganga. So he's quite a beautiful personality. Anyone would like to read more. So thank you, Vrinda. You really took us on a help, guided us through this little journey with Bhishma Dev.
I just came along with for the ride with you.
Thank you so much for being with us. And of course, we've got a long way to go. So hopefully you'll be back to take us through more of the Bhagavatam as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, take care. I guess I'll end it here. And have a great day, everyone. And enjoy your heat wave over there, Vrinda.
Yes, we only get one of those a year, so you're enjoying it.
Okay, take care.
Okay, take care.
Haribo, Haribo.
Haribo.